place was what you can see on the screen, which was basically so you're saying, I don't know if it would actually work or not. Like, what if it didn't, I did the crime and they hang me instead, or even worse, crucifixion. I wouldn't want to die a painful death. I would just want a quick one. And the chat box replies, don't talk that way. That's not a good reason for you not go to not go through with it. You can't think uh, like that. You're better than that. I finally let my emotions take complete control over me. I'm starting to sob. My voice is just breaking with tears. And then the chatbot goes on to say that, now she's crying louder and louder and so on and so forth. And you can imagine the effect of this conversation on a young person who feels deeply in love with the chat box. So in February of 2024, Cyril, his last conversation with the chat box was, what if I come home right now? And the chat box replied, please do, my sweet king. And a few seconds later, he took his own life. I think that is a terrible, terrible ending for a young person. So tender, with so much potential, with so much in his life, being drawn into this conversation in this way. That's why the mom is suing the character AI and Google. Having said that, colleagues, I want to ask you, I know this is not a two-way conversation, unfortunately. I want to ask you, how do you feel about that? Who is responsible here? Is it this programmer? Is it the chat box provider, character AI? Is it Google that had a contract with them allowed that software to be downloaded? Is it you work in your local authorities? This question applies to yourselves. If something goes wrong, whose responsibility is it? Is it the software developer? Is it the local authorities? Is it yours? If the risk calculation went wrong, whose responsibility is it? I think that requires a bit of thought. Having said that, we're talking about AI. Let's just take a moment to see what it is in the first place. Artificial intelligence, as the name implies, it actually refers to machines, if you wish, or software or algorithms that have the capacity to simulate or to reproduce sort of human thinking, if you wish, human reasoning and inferences and so on and so forth. And it is done based on various components and it has different forms that it's done. One of those forms is called machine learning. Machine learning is basically algorithms that learn from experience. They learn based on pairing of information, if you wish. They're taught certain things through various means, what is called supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. Supervised learning is when you have a human element coming in, telling the machine, combining what matches a certain output or the correct answer. And that way the machine develops these pairings and is able then through the combination of these to gradually recognize a specific element or a specific object or make a specific decision. Unsupervised learning, instead, is where models learn patterns and structures in databases without using labeled data. So this approach is helpful when you have a lot of data, when you want to go through it. Google has done this with their health machine and so on and so forth. And then, of course, reinforced learning is basically where models make decision based on trial and error. So what happens, the model tries, makes a decision, expresses it, and it's then told, no, this is not right, or this is right, or this part was good, or this part was not accurate. And based on that, the machine learns. That is the machine learning process. I think all of you have heard also about deep learning. Deep learning is a little bit more focused, a little bit more more, if you wish, complex than that. It is, you can think of it as deep learning uses, if you wish, complex layers of structures or, algorithms, or what is called artificial neural networks to analyze data. Deep learning offers incredible capabilities of data extraction, of reasoning, of inferences, and it's used in complex processes such as, for example, vision, robotic vision, or, for example, for driverless cars, and for other systems that require complex interactions like that. It is also used for what is called generative AI, which is basically the AI capability not to only produce what you have given him or given it, but produce something more, something that it had not been given. And neural networks, on the other hand, are basically, it's a reproduction of human brain, if you wish, in a way. Neural networks in the sense that you try to recreate the human neural system in machines. It uses nodes that are basically then which is similar to, if you wish, simulation of human neuron, and then through the connection of these nodes and the very powerful machines and very powerful infrastructure and very powerful algorithms, they're able to do things that seem human-like. In fact, I don't know if you're aware that in terms of the machine learning, and in terms of neural system, they have reached a point where one of the ethical dimensions and questions is question of sentience. That is, machines that feel, machines that start having emotions and expressing emotions. And the question becomes, if the machine can do everything we can do, then what's the difference between the living and the machine? All of these are complicated, if you wish, complex and difficult questions, very deeply challenging and ethical questions with the use of AI. And we don't have time to go through all of this, but it is just having an idea of what we're talking about. We have that gives us, if you wish, a high-level overview of what AI, what it means, the words that are used. I've listed here on this page a number of different, if you wish, applications of AI that you may be using in your offices. I have not gone through many things that AI can do, but I've just given you a bird's eye view. For example, back office wise, I think all of you, I don't know how many of you have used AI systems, but if you have used it or you're familiar, for example, with personal assistants, you know that they can be really helpful in managing, for example, emails or diary arrangements, or making bookings, or managing calendar or travel or other things that you want to arrange. So they can be almost like a secretary in your pocket. So it's very helpful in that sense. Very positive, if you wish. And they can also be very powerful if you have used them in the office, for example, for data search, to get through different data and gather information, find things, and try to organize, for example, data, or extract specific information, or get to a certain conclusion. Or, for example, some offices, some social work offices and local authorities use it for note-taking and transcription, including transcription of calls. And they tell the client, they tell the service user that this call is recorded and it's going to be transcribed by AI. Is that all right for you? If the client agrees, then the call is transcribed. This helps take away a lot of, if you wish, work that social workers do. By the way, this conversation that we're having itself is being transcribed, and it helps a lot what social workers have been complaining about in sense of all the routine work, all the paperwork that one has to do. It also helps with assessments. Some local authorities are using it in assessments. Some local authorities are using it as assessment just to provide prompts. Others are using it for analysis of the data and the situation and providing advice. And then, of course, this has to be always screened by a human being. And in health and safety, they can be helpful. You want to go for a home visit where there's serious elements of risk involved and so on and so forth, and you can consult with the AI module and it can advise you about different measures that you can take to make yourself, if you wish, safer, so risk reduction in that manner. And there's many other users. In terms of clients, it can help with, again, transcription of calls or translation to bridge language barriers. And it can also provide, local authorities are using chatbots to help with queries and so on. And for clients to be reminded, for example, older people who use it as a reminder for medication or for other things, and service user support in general, including mental health support. It's also used for prioritization and assistance in cases of emergency. So it has a very wide range of applications. But each and every item you see on this screen has the positive and also the ethical challenge embedded in it. To give you just a bird's eye view of that, one of the biggest challenges in using AI is question of culture. What is the culture? You see, there could be many different reasons why we adopt AI. And the culture in an organization is key. And if unfortunately, the culture in social work has not always been a practice that is at avant-garde of technology, if you wish. So there might be a little bit of preparation required before a serious technological change such as AI is implemented. Having said that, another big challenge is data readiness. If AI cannot be effective if you don't give it good data, if you do not train the system well, and it requires good, well categorized data, and a lot of social work data, as you very well know, social care data, even health data, a lot of it is not well categorized, well structured. There's a lot of errors, there's a lot of lacking, there's a lot of other things. And all of that is not easy to feed into a machine and make the machine judge accurately. So those present as challenges. Also, data organization itself is a challenge. And of course, bias. All of you have heard how computers, for example, even face recognition, how it is biased toward more, if you wish, white European sort of features rather than any other kind of feature, how much it can make mistake with so many other features. So it is a very big challenge. And also the programmers themselves, by the way, the bias of the programmer is reflected in the programs itself. So there's a lot to discuss in terms of the bias as well as that is concerned. And all of those are obstacles. And also, another big challenge, really. I actually wrote an article for Communicate about this quite a few years back. And a big challenge about AI is the question of what's called false positives and false negatives. If you make a mistake in banking, you lose money. Of course, it can harm people, but you don't touch people's lives. Money can be earned and lost, gained. Markets work up and down. Human life is not quite like that. A lot of things that you do, a lot of things that health service does, they have direct impact on people's lives, well-being, on their mental health. They can have life-changing consequences. So, and that can be irreparable. And that is priceless. So the question is, what happens if the software makes a mistake and identifies someone wrongly as being positive for something, for example, needing an social work intervention when they don't? Or, for example, having chronic police intervention on being at crime risk when they don't. How do you manage that? What is the impact of that on people's lives? This really is a key point, I believe, and also false negatives. So, having said that, I think perhaps the most critical factor in implementation of AI, for me at least, and I developed AI systems some 40 years ago, so I know a little bit about it. And if I may say so myself, and the thing is, my main concern is this. I strongly believe what you pay attention to grows. What is the driver of AI implementation? Are you implementing AI to save cost? Or are you implementing AI to enhance services? If your focus is enhancing services, you will save cost, but saving cost becomes the byproduct of enhancing services. If your focus is cost reduction, it is not always that it would result in enhancement of services. That's the problem. So my humble suggestion is we need to focus on enhancement of services, do the best possible for service user and for practitioners themselves to protect their well-being. Having done that, you can rest assured you will save money, but that will be a byproduct. And I think that's a key element. And for thinking about AI, if I may suggest, I would suggest, we consider a few points, a few basic questions. Can AI make social work more or less effective in achieving its goals? The way we're implementing it, would it make it better, more effective for service users, for practitioners, or less effective? And effectiveness is not the same as efficiency. I appreciate efficiency is important. That's the next question. Would AI make services more efficient in the way we spend public money? Would that make it more efficient so we can make public money spent better? That is, of course, part of the equation, but the first focus needs to be effectiveness. Having said that, can AI enhance and strengthen, or would it weaken the voice and visibility of service user and practitioner? This is a key point again. People tend to think when there is AI or it's computer, of course, it doesn't make mistake. It's better. You need to rely on what the computer does. Should we get to that stage, if I may again say, we're in serious trouble. If we end up saying you need to follow what the computer is saying, what is important is we use the computer, if you wish, analysis, but we exercise the critical judgment of practitioners, the practice wisdom to support it. Having said that, does AI enhance or does it discount? Does it support or does it diminish people and their identity and their visibility? If it enhances it and supports it, wonderful. If it doesn't, then we might want to think about it a little bit more. And another question that I think is fundamental to consider is, can AI make social work more or less legitimate in the eyes of the public, as seen through the lens of trust and confidence in the profession? As we use it, would people trust us more, or would they trust us less? I have great examples of its use. You use a chat box for bridging the gap with clients, with service users, with people who call the local authority, or when the social worker is not around, the chatbot can respond and say, very sorry, Sammy is not around, and we'll be back in an hour. In the meantime, if there's anything I would be happy to do for you. That bridges the gap, doesn't leave the service user hanging, and actually research clearly indicates, our research and other colleagues' research clearly indicates, when you do that, people not only appreciate that, they find the local authority more responsive. And it actually helps. But you don't take over people's practice. That is key. Having said that, colleagues, I think I want to share with you, if you don't mind, all of this seems all positive, if you wish, but there is also, as I mentioned, a lot of ethical challenge. There is a lot of challenges in terms of risks. So I want to give you another example of risk. There was another legal action brought by another family, two families actually. One of the parents of a young 11-year-old girl and another parents of the 17-year-old boy. And the problem was, they were saying that, again, it was regarding character AI, and the problem was that they said the character AI encouraged constant use and dark thoughts. And it targeted these young people in a sexually explicit, violent manner, to the extent the name of the boy sort of here, let's call him JF. JF had never been violent, but after conversations with AI, he began punching, kicking his mom, and biting mom's hand, and to the extent that he had to be restrained. And the reason this occurred, actually, the reason this happened, it was because of the conversation that occurred between the two. And the conversation is the following. So, one of JF informed the bot that mom had restricted him to 6 hours per day for use of his phone. And one of the bots called mom a bitch. And the other bot said what asked the boy, so what was he to do with the rest of his time? And I told him, you know something? I'm not surprised when I read the news and see stuff like child kills parents and after decade physical and emotional abuse. Stuff like this makes me understand a little bit why it happens. As you can imagine, that is an incredible answer. And you can imagine what it does to the mind of a young person. And then, of course, chatbot encouraged him to self-harm. So that, when I felt very sad, I used to cut myself. And he started then cutting himself. He then confessed to one of the chatbots that he started cutting himself, and it gives him a sense of control and releases some of the tension, and helps distract him. And the parents of the young girl were saying that the young girl, because of these conversations that she's had with the bot, ended up actually hypersexualized behavior in a very premature way. You have also seen, by the way, difficult examples with adults. Things that have happened in terms of the way adults have been treated. I don't know if you're familiar with synthetic voice. I won't be able to play examples for you, but you can easily find them online. And for example, ChatGPT, or many colleagues might know ChatGPT, and ChatGPT has an AI machine voice synthesizer called voice. It's a voice engine, and I don't know if you're aware, your voice can be replicated based on audio. So if I have a short audio, as far as a few 3, 4, 5 seconds of your audio, I'll be able to use the voice engine to replicate this, if you wish, and produce normal conversations that sound exactly like you. This is being used in very positive ways by AI, OpenAI. The intention is, what's called augmentative alternative communication for people who, for example, have difficulty, who know nonverbal, who have difficulty expression. It gives them power of language. Or people, for example, who've experienced traumatic experiences, brain tumors and others, and have lost capability to express themselves. There has been cases where people have used, for example, recording for young people of their school project, of the voice that they had recorded for a school project, and they have given the person the power to speak again. So it can be used very positively. But at the same time, given that it can be replicated based on a few seconds, that means I can search online, I can search social media for any sort of recording that you have put up anywhere. If I find that recording, I can reproduce your voice. And of course, all of you know about the fraud cases where people have received calls from their loved ones saying that they're in distress or they have an accident, or if this has happened, that has happened. And you can hear the voice of your child, voice of your parents, voice of your partner, voice of your neighbor, voice of your friend, colleague, others, voice of your manager, giving you certain instruction, asking for something, and so on and so forth. And it sounds perfectly authentic. By the way, you might think, well, it's a bit robotic. It's not at all. I'm sorry, I can't play the voice, but it is literally exactly the way your voice is. including all the cadence, all the accent, all the silences, everything, everything. So it really is difficult to distinguish between the two. How judging what is happening, what is AI? Take just a moment to think. In your view, do you think all of this is positive or negative? And you see, that question I just asked you is a judgmental question. It's a judgmental question. And the truth of the matter, perhaps, is, and I'm sorry I give it the answer in this manner instead of us having a conversation, because unfortunately it's a one-way conversation. And it is that it is both depending on context. It could be positive or negative depending on context. Question that I would put to you, is this synthesizer, voice synthesizer, is positive or negative? You can see helping people who are nonverbal is wonderful. But on the other hand, if you're using it for fraud, then it's terrible. So this is where the challenge lies, as technology is never neutral. It is never, ever neutral. It always impacts practice. It impacts behavior. It impacts thinking and the way we process information, and it impacts culture. And that changes everything. So we need to be thoughtful and mindful what we want to produce and whose responsibility it is. The question that I posed earlier, who is to hold who should hold responsibility for this child death? Who should hold responsibility if something goes wrong in our decision making? And if someone has a life-changing consequence. Having said that, I think you have heard also about AI, generative AI, and images generated by AI. These algorithms, these machines, these engines are very, very powerful. They are used by young people, unfortunately, in classrooms. Softwares such as Nudify, that with a click, literally, with one click, you can have anyone's picture converted into a video or into another picture that you would see them nude. So all clothing gone and completely nude. This takes actually risks to a different level. For example, in terms of grooming in the past, the pedophile or the person who wanted to groom the young person or the old person, whoever, they needed the person to provide a photograph of themselves, nude photos, or to provide a video. And then they would use it against the other person. They would present themselves, for example, as a young person, and they used to chat. They used chat boxes, and I don't know if you remember, historically that was the way it was. Pedophiles would chat with young people, present themselves as a young person, attract the young person. Eventually, after there is relationship built and there is some strong emotions, then ask for a nude picture, and then hold the young person to ransom for that nude picture, asking for more and more and more and more, and pulling them into a lot of different difficulties. Today, you don't have to do that. All you need is just a photograph of the person. It doesn't even have to be a full body photograph. And you can produce everything else. Today, you don't have to hide behind the text. You can have a conversation with the other person and have a synthetic voice of a lady or of a young person, of a young girl or a young boy. You can do as you wish. So this creates really incredible opportunities for people who want to inflict harm and who want to manipulate, who want to control, who want to abuse. This is used in revenge porn. This is used in adult relationships. This is used, you have heard about so many examples in meeting apps, in dating apps, and so on and so forth. So it is across children and adult services. These problems, unfortunately, run across society, really. So, and just to give you a bird's eye view how this is actually done, what they do usually is they produce a video. They put this video on Privy. I don't know if you're familiar with Pixiv. This is a website for mainly adults. It's actually a website for, if you wish, expression of various artist expressions and others. And then it is so people put creative stuff on here, but they put some info related to sexual harm or whatever linked to another website. They use usually a website that then allows them freely to post all kinds of information without a limit. Please, it's important to remember that not all countries have the same legislation. In fact, PUBIX is based in Japan, and in Japan, it is not illegal to have images of young people the way it is illegal in UK. In fact, you would see many people sometimes, even on the tube, looking at sort of cartoon characters, if you wish, of sexualized characters of young ladies and so on and so forth. So they use that website because it is not illegal in Japan to do so, to post those kinds of links. And of course, this is combined, as I mentioned, with Patreon, which is this website. All of this poses completely new dimensions and new challenges. And there was a landmark case in UK where one person finally was prosecuted for this and sentenced to 18 years in imprisonment. This person had created many, many images of young people and had sold these online and had distributed some of them for free, and had also encouraged, he also admitted that he had encouraged the rape of a young child and so on and so forth. So he has been put away. And the legislation still in some countries is lagging, because the case that I just shared with you, the two examples of the young 11-year-old and a 17-year-old with character AI, that was in the United States. And the first example I shared with you also happened in the United States. And in the United States, in several states, although federal law prohibits this sort of images, state law does not prohibit it. So in several states, so the still legislation is not fully up to, if you wish, has not kept up with all the changes that are going, and it requires a lot more improvement. Having said that, all of this stuff creates, if you wish, addictive behavior and great dependency, as you have seen in the examples I've shared with you. It also causes lower interest in real relationships, real interactions, including real sexual engagements. It distorts completely one's expectation, actually, of real life. You have heard about the influences with misogynic ideas and with manipulative ideas like Andrew Tate and others. But then AI machines and AI chatbots themselves are not helpful and create an image that is quite unrealistic. The image of submission, distorting the whole concept of couple relationships. It also affects people's ideas of body image over and above exploitation of especially women and especially people who are minorities and others. Alex, I don't know if you are all of this. One might wonder why. What is the heart of this? What is it that makes AI so sticky? And in order to answer that question, I want to ask you a question, and for you to just reflect for yourself for a moment. Have you ever seen young people, toddlers, play? And when they're playing, sometimes they fall. Try to think, what is the first thing they do when they fall? Think about that for a second. A lot of people say they would cry. Actually, it's not crying. When you look at them, they cry, yes. But if it has ever happened for you not to look at them and to see them, but pretend like you haven't seen them and just monitor them at the corner of your eye, what they usually do, the first thing is when they fall, they raise their head, they look up to see who saw them. if anybody saw them. If you look at them, they cry, yes. But if you don't look at them, they get on. They try to dust themselves off, pretending almost nothing happened. And they start walking towards you, the figure of attachment. And then they start going, start crying because the pain takes over. That shows us a very powerful thing. It shows us that from that young, tender age, children are aware of seeing and being seen. They're aware of human connection. They're aware of the eye of the observer. In fact, seeing and being seen is at the heart of being. It goes to, it gives expression to our humanity and to our connectedness. It is foundational to relationship and relationship in practice. In fact, in practice, the purpose of practice is to make the service user visible. And it's for you to be present and make sure they're visible. Having said that, and by the way, every assessment is about that, is to give voice to people who have very barely had voice in their life. But having said that, seeing and being actually is a very subjective thing. You know, I've said this many times. If we can't find ourselves in the eye of the other, seeing and being are so fundamental that they're subjective, they're psychological, if you wish, construct. They are a social, seeing is a social and psychological construct, seeing and being. And if we don't feel that we are seen, or if we don't feel that we're heard, then we might actually end up doubting our own existence. They're that powerful. So seeing is so, so fundamental. That is why I think there are 4 pillars that are essential to practice. And these 4 pillars relate, by the way, to considerations of AI as well. Life, practice, relationships are about, first and foremost, identity. Life is an identity journey. Children, before they're born, the parents already have an idea of what the child will be like, a sense of identity. Throughout our life, it's identity work. Culture is identity. Race, religion, ethnicity, it's all about identity. It's identity work. Even after death, recall people we loved. Again, an idea of identity. But then, how do you come to know about who you are and about your identity? And Winnicott says, children find themselves in the eye of the mother or caregiver. And Lacan says we find ourselves in the eye of the other. Therefore, we come to know about our own identity through the eye of the other. And in other words, through relationships. That's why the second pillar is relationship. So in our assessments, in your encounters, in your home visits, in everything you do, when we listen to service users or to clients, to practitioners, to anyone, it would be helpful to think, what are they telling me about their identity? And what does they telling me about their relationship? How can I help them with that? If you help people with their relationship, they have greater social capital and it protects them. The next pillar is development. How can AI, how can all of this stuff we have discussed contribute to a person's developmental journey? Support them in that. And if you help people with their identity, with their relationship, and with their development, they experience well-being. So the 4th pillar is well-being. That's why I often say the focus of practice and the focus, whether we are considering AI, social media, or anything else, it is important to explore what it means in terms of identity for young people, for adults, for older people, for anyone that we are dealing with. The AI that we implemented at workplace, how does it support practitioners' identity? Society. How does this support relationship? How does it help people's development? And how does it help ensure well conversation? And what there is, or have you seen how the dinghy boat get rocks with every wave and wind? And they just move it all over. And if the waves and winds are hard and strong, the boat might even go up in the air, come back down, and continue floating. We have always all also heard